Oklahoma City's the best team, but I want to see Indiana win.
Them too?
Yeah.
Wow, that's a bizarre.
I know, neither. Oklahoma City's the best team. They had the best record in the league. 60.
Big city folks are complaining. He's probably complaining.
It's on TV all over the country. What are they talking about?
You all set then? Well, I hate to break up friendly-sounding conversations, but I guess we'll go ahead and get started here. Great to see my colleagues on this beautiful first meeting in June. Appreciate that, and thank you everyone here who's in the chambers for joining us today. So I'm going to officially call to order the Committee of the Whole meeting for the Kalamazoo City Commission for Monday, June 2nd, 2025. First order of business, roll call. Clerk Borling.
Commissioner Cooney.
Present.
Commissioner Decker. Commissioner Hoffman.
Present.
Commissioner Pradel.
Present.
Commissioner Wilson. Present. Vice Mayor Hess.
Present.
Mayor Anderson.
Here. Thank you, Clerk Borling. May I have a motion to excuse Commissioner Decker? Motion made by Commissioner Hoffman.
Support.
Supported by Vice Mayor Hess. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Thank you. Motion passes. Communications, Manager Ritzma.
Nothing, Your Honor.
All right. We are now down to the portion of the agenda for public comment for the Committee of the Whole. Just a reminder, at the Committee of the Whole, you will just have 2 minutes for your public comments. There will also be a public comment opportunity at our business meeting at 7. Please come forward, state your name and whether you live in the city.
Good afternoon. My name is Mary Jordan Woods. I live in the city. I am a homeowner, and I pay property taxes on several other properties. I am here tonight speaking as a Northside resident, and it is concerning the transformational brownfield plan project. I was told that I can't speak when it comes up, so I have to speak now. I just want to say I have volunteered on the committee for 8 years to try to make a difference in a part of our neighborhood. And I am one of many residents that when the flight left the north side, we stayed. We stayed with the X train, with the drugs and everything else, and we paid our share of taxes. And so I am here tonight to ask this commission, and I did print out copies of what the priorities of the north side, the priorities of the Northside Cultural Business District is, and I am just here tonight to ask the developers to add resident owner-occupied housing and resident-owned businesses in the district to their neighborhood enterprise zone application. I met with them. The next meeting will be with the mayor and Marilyn Pulley as an exec, but I am here strictly as a Northside resident. I can't speak for our committee. I'm speaking as a resident who believe in the neighborhood, and even when the taxes keep going up, we are least likely to be able to afford them, but we still stay. So we are asking the developers to please include the residents that live in the district in their enterprise application and the resident-owned businesses. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, please.
Good afternoon. My name is Marilyn Pulley. I am a Northside resident and also a Northside business owner. I too am going to ditto what Ms. Jordan Woods has said, because we have been there through it all, and we are working to increase the productivity in the community. So I too am asking the developers to include resident-owned homeowners and resident-owned businesses in the neighborhood enterprise application. Please consider developers. Thank you.
Thank you.
On May 3rd, 2025, the Kalamazoo Department of Public Safety responded to a gun violence incident on Vine Street. A 3-year-old girl was critically injured with a self-inflicted gunshot wound after being left alone in a vehicle with another child and a loaded gun. It has now been 30 days. No charges, no arrests. KDPS says that their investigation is complete and they're working with the prosecutor's office. Still nothing. This is the same department that regularly posts arrests, mugshots, and confiscated firearms on social media, often within hours of an incident. They make it clear they're tough on gun violence, yet in this case, involving a defenseless child in clear negligence, the silence is deafening. 30 days, and the adult responsible still walks free. No charges, no arrests, no mugshot or name released. No accountability. This person's actions led directly to a child being critically wounded and constitute a clear threat to public safety, and yet we've seen no public consequences. Frankly, it raises troubling questions. Why so many other cases result in immediate arrests while this one seems to drag on? Are some suspects treated differently? Are some more protected? Leaving children alone in a car is negligence. Leaving them with an unsecured, loaded firearm is criminal. Even without a shooting, that demands prosecution. But here, with a 3-year-old critically injured, nothing. Our justice system is supposed to deter this kind of recklessness, is it not? If there are no consequences, what message are we sending? That protecting irresponsible gun owners matters more than protecting children? This failure to act is outrageous. We need justice for that child and for our community. I urge city leadership to take a hard look at this case and get some law enforcement out of our law enforcement. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the chambers who would like to take advantage of this public comment period? I'm seeing no one at this time. I want to thank everyone that did come to this Committee of the Whole meeting and provide us with your thoughts on various topics. And I just want to remind you that there is a public comment period at our business meeting as well that starts at 7. Now we'll be moving along to the work of the Committee of the Whole. Manager Wisma.
Thank you, Mayor. First topic this evening is an update on our downtown parking, and I want to ask Christina Anderson to come forward. She's our Deputy Community Planning Economic Development Director and City Planner. Christina?
Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and Commissioners. I am going to turn the mic over to Rob Baccigalupi, who is our parking consultant. But before I do that, I just wanted to give you a quick preview of the intent of tonight's presentation. We wanted to provide you an informational presentation. A lot of this is follow-up from tasks that we talked about completing when we were here last summer, looking at the parking ordinance and changes being made to the system, work that we said that we would do related to accessible parking, thinking about how parking is being used and how that may impact placement of meters and free parking spaces within downtown, in addition to the free spaces that are always available for the first 90 minutes in the ramp. So tonight's presentation is going to talk about the work that's been done over the last year and provide you with some next steps for what that work entails for 2025 and a timeline of when it will be implemented. And so with that, I will give you Rob Baccigalupi from Mission North, and he'll give a presentation, and then we're available for questions afterwards. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Hi,
Welcome.
Mayor and Commission. Rob Baccigalupi. I understand you have this presentation, so I'm just going to kind of hit some highlights. First of all, I just want to point out that the overriding goal of these recommended changes is making sure that there's parking where people want to park. So the main goal is what we call availability. We want to make sure the parking is available, and that's what drives these 3 recommendations, one being 2-tiered on-street parking, second is new meter equipment, and finally the third is improving barrier-free parking downtown. So, this advances. Okay. First off, this map comes from the 2019 blueprint, which is the 2019 parking study. And in that, there was a recommendation to organize paid parking on the street and also to simplify it. As you can see, there are 3, even though we call it 2-tiered parking, it's really, there's kind of 3 tiers. There's a premium zone in purple, there is a base rate zone, and then there, of course, is free parking. So this was the recommendation back in 2019, and it was based on demand. It was based on the demand at the time, and that came largely from some parking counts that were done back in just before the final report in 2019. They were done in November of 2018. This is the map showing the count in the morning on November 30, and the most important metric that we look at is occupancy at 85%. And the reason we use that number of 85% occupancy is the experts, if you will say that anything over 85% leads to the impression and the reality that parking is full. So if you can imagine a block of downtown with 10 parking spaces, and you might find one space vacant, that's, that would be 90% occupied. If you were to go around the block, you might find that space filled up immediately. So it's essentially, it gets anything over 85% feels like it is too full. It leads to the impression that you can't park there, in that block, and that leads to perceptions that it's hard to park downtown. So that's why we use 85%. Anything less than that is good. Obviously, we don't want it too low because that means nobody's parking there, but if it does get low, that helps inform decisions about, maybe this is an area that doesn't require meters because it's, demand is too low. So anyway, that's why we look at demand. It helps us understand availability, and here is a map of that same day in the evening. Again, kind of identifying where those hot spots are, where we see higher parking levels, and that kind of led to that recommendation that we just saw earlier for the tiered parking zones. So recently, obviously a lot has changed since 2019, but we recently did a parking count back in September in the evening, and you can see that parking has shifted a little bit, and it's also grown in terms of demand. So this is a description of that. And based on that new information, and by the way, we do have some other data. We've got park mobile usage that kind of backs up this, some of these recommendations. But based on all that, we are recommending a couple of changes to the where parking is free and where parking is has pricing or has meters. You can see that we're recommending some changes down in the southwest part of town where some new development has occurred, where demand has increased, and we're recommending maybe easing off on that East Michigan corridor, again, due to more recent information about demand. So this map simply kind of summarizes what would happen in terms of which streets would be paid, which ones would not, and it also kind of talks about which ones are changing. So this is kind of a nice map, we think, to help folks understand what's going to happen on an individual block. It summarizes those 25 pricing recommendations. So that's pricing, and tied to pricing is new parking meters. I know we've talked before with City Commission about how the current meters are technically obsolete. It's very hard to maintain them. It's potentially impossible to change anything in them because we can't find parts. So we have been pushing upgrading the meters. Of course, we did Kalamazoo Mall last year. And therefore, we are recommending doing more of that in other parts of town. And the City Commission was nice enough to budget, well, before I get that, to that point, we have mapped out where new pay stations would go. So our thought is we would use the same pay stations that were installed at the Kalamazoo Mall elsewhere around downtown. This map kind of indicates where those pay stations would go and where, due to the fact that, some budget constraints, but also some other factors where we will recycle those old meters. One of the reasons that we wouldn't put a pay station on a block, for example, is if there's only, say, 3 spaces on that block, because it just isn't economical to put a whole pay station there and incur all those costs for 3 parking spaces. Whereas if there's 10, that makes a lot of sense. So that helped inform this map as to where we're recommending pay station locations versus just kind of taking the best of what we have in terms of the single head meters and putting them in other spots. And this kind of gives you a look at the budget for meter purchase. As I said, there's an allotment for meter purchase of about $367,000, and based on that, comparing that with the analysis that we looked at, we feel like we need more than that amount in terms of pay stations. So we're using some other projects like the St. John's Place reconstruction over here to add stations there. Of course, Kalamazoo Avenue is another project where we can utilize that budget to add 5 pay stations in that location. And then the rest will be paid for out of this budget allocation. And then anything we can't do, we will use, again, recycled meters that we currently have on the street, the best of the ones we have on the street. And I do want to mention that I didn't mention it before when we were looking at the maps, but we do not intend changing the timing of meters here on St. John's Place. I know that's come up before, that we want to make sure that there's access to public meetings in the evening, so we have no intention on extending that enforcement into the evening. Those will be free after 5. So again, meters were installed, pay stations were installed at Kalamazoo Mall back in November of last year. And since then, we've been, the great thing about this technology is we can get all kinds of data out of it and understand behavior. And I show you this because this is just April of this past year, a couple months ago. But this shows that about 1/3 of folks are paying with a physical credit card at the Kalamazoo Mall, and 2/3, approximately, are paying with their smartphone, using mobile pay. There has been, some cities are looking at doing away with meters altogether. And perhaps someday that will make sense, but there's still a large chunk of the population here that wants to use a physical credit card. 2%, of course, are still using coins, so there's 2% using coins and 34% using a physical credit card. So it's just good to have that information to help us understand, payment behavior. So with the rollout of the pay stations at the Kalamazoo Mall last year, of course, didn't go as smoothly as we'd hoped, and we learned some things along the way. Based on, some of the things we learned were that we want to test before launch, for example. We learned some things about signage, making sure that signage is clearer and more visible from further down the road. More public awareness of changes that are happening on each block. So we're planning on doing some things to help along that, help with that. And then, of course, you know, we did this last year, but there's always a grace period. Anytime we make a change, we have some grace period to make sure that the parking public has time to acclimate to whatever change has taken place. So this is kind of a schedule of what we're going to do to help with the meter rollout. Okay, lastly, the last kind of bit of, or piece of availability for parking downtown is barrier-free spaces. Barrier-free spaces on street, the standard we are using is this standard here, and this comes from the U.S. Access Board Public Right-of-Way Accessibility Guidelines, and it kind of uses the same formula that a developer would use for a parking lot, but it applies it to a city block. So that's what we did, is we applied that standard to the city blocks in the downtown parking area, and this map shows where we are good, those are the green blocks, where we are not good, where we are insufficient, and those would be the kind of reddish blocks, and then where there are no barrier-free spaces, so we really need to do some work, and that would be the gray blocks. So as part of all this, this year, we want to assure that we do meet the standard by reallocating and adding barrier-free spaces. We think it'd probably be in the neighborhood of a couple of dozen new barrier-free spaces downtown to, to rectify this this map and this deficiency. So, in summary, again, the goal is just, ultimately, we just want any parker to find parking where they want to go. If somebody is in a hurry and they want to park at the Kalamazoo Mall and they want to go in and go out, they should be able to find a parking space where, a high demand area. Or if they're not in a hurry and they want to get their steps in, then there will be free options nearby. Of course, there's the free parking in the decks for 90 minutes, and then there will be free parking a few blocks away from the main part of downtown. So also we want, of course, to simplify and have greater uniformity so that the parking public, it's easier for them to understand how to park and where they can park and what their options are. And then this will also improve operational efficiency by, doing more with less. So that is all I have, and I'd be happy to respond to any questions.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Questions, Commission? Vice Mayor Hess.
Thanks for being here, Rob. Appreciate it. You mentioned the decks, and I'm just wondering if you have user data on how many people are actually using that Epic parking ramp and the one for 90 minutes free.
We do, and I'm sorry I didn't include that, but we do have that. One of the nice things about the decks is because they're a closed system, we can count people going in and out. And when the free 90 minutes started out, it took a while for it to have an impact, but now we're seeing more use in the decks, so that's a good thing. I think the word's getting out that it's free for 90 minutes, and we're seeing more usage.
Other questions, Commission? Commissioner Prado?
Thanks for being here. Appreciate it. I was wondering, I noticed so it's been about 5 years since the last evaluation or census, if you will, of parking. Sometime in the next 5 years, we're going to have a new arena open downtown Kalamazoo, which could potentially bring, upwards of 700,000 to 800,000 additional people downtown per year. I anticipate that's going to change that census count quite a bit in between a 5-year period, and so I just wanted to get your thoughts about how we can best anticipate that and be thoughtful proactively before we have to react because maybe we couldn't anticipate what would happen and where people would fluctuate downtown.
Yeah, we did make sure that we did not, assumed that there would be low demand in that area because we knew it was coming, so we're keeping that in the paid zone, that area. And, with new pay stations coupled with the park, the smart app usage, we'll have really good data, constantly coming in to evaluate how that impacts, how that will impact the usage on the street as well as the decks. So that's one of the great things about the new technology. Doing these parking counts, we did the one last September. I can tell you, it's a lot of. It took us. I think there were 8 people. It was all hands on deck, and it's a lot of work to do these parking counts. And I do parking studies in other communities, and I've investigated drones and all. And it is not easy to do parking counts. But if you have the technology in the street, you kind of have that data coming in constantly, so you don't have to do the parking count.
More real-time data. I appreciate that. The other component as well is this is a pretty significant investment in upgrading, which I'm very glad we're doing, and I like the idea of as much uniformity as possible when we can achieve that. We have some pretty significant once in multi-generation construction projects envisioned for downtown Kalamazoo in the coming years as well. And my one question would be is if we made this significant investment in this technology, how easy would it be to reconstruct sidewalks and curb cuts and all these sort of things that might be happening along the same time that we're doing major road projects, so that we don't invest heavily in these in the new kiosks and then just have them get dinged up because of the construction or destroyed in that process.
Yeah, the nice thing about these pay stations is they're solar powered, so they're not hardwired, and you can just unbolt them and move them out of the way while construction goes on, and then maybe put them in a different spot once it's done. So that's makes it easy to accommodate that kind of thing.
Cool. Thank you.
Any other questions, Commission? Just a couple from me here. Back to our first exercise in this. I know there's a lot of things to bring into play, but I know we had some issues related to ADA height on these kiosks first time through. I don't know if there's a different model that we should have gotten, or if it was how they were installed, and here we're talking about putting in spaces to accommodate that, and yet the equipment we put in didn't meet those ADA guidelines. Any thoughts about that as how going forward?
Yeah, we learned a lot through that process. The difficulty in the Kalamazoo Mall specifically is we were putting them over snow melt. So we had to, we ultimately ended up putting in a raised foundation, and that's where it got out of compliance with ADA. The units that we actually switched out the units midstream, and the units that are out there now are shorter. So if we run into that again, which right now I don't know that we're going to, but if we do, it'll work because we can accommodate a small pedestal that has to sit above the snow melt and still meet ADA.
Okay, helpful, good learning there. And I know another thing just about, I'm sure it is quite a bit of consideration relative to locating these, and I know we went through some learnings on that too. I think accidentally put one in a place where there was a standard restaurant eating area on the sidewalk, that sort of thing. Are we looking at those kinds of effects too as we look for further locations and what businesses might be adjacent, what they do maybe on a seasonal basis in terms of, serving customers outside? How's that all going to work?
Yeah, we will definitely cross-check with all the, start out with the cafe approvals and then go from there. I might lean on Megan back here to help out with interfacing with the businesses to assure that we understand, if they are using the right-of-way, that we're not going to put this in a spot that impacts them.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Okay. Thank you very much for your presentation. I appreciate it.
Thank you. If I should.
Manager Witzman.
Well, thank you. I'd like Jamie McCarthy to come forward. She's got a presentation on the transformational brownfield plan. for consideration. So our development manager, McCarthy.
Welcome, Jamie McCarthy.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and Commissioners. I'm going to invite a whole group of individuals, a whole team here to come up and speak on this project, this transformational project. I'm very excited to bring a preview of this project forward today. Well, Clerk Borling, I don't know if my pointer is working right now. Thank you. All right, so as everybody gets settled, I'm just going to get us started here. You can see from our list, we have several folks here who are going to be giving us a preview of this project. This is an application that's in at the state level, and we are anticipating a number of associated applications coming into the city of Kalamazoo to help support this project. And so the purpose of our project, or our presentation today, is to give you an overview of the Transformational Brownfield Program. This is an entire program based out of the state, but it has some local implications. It has some local approval and approval timelines that we want to get you familiar with today. This is really our kickoff here publicly, and so we want to get you familiar with aspects of the project. We want to start getting you familiar with the some of the financial aspects, certainly some of the applications and incentives that we're anticipating receiving here at the city. You know, we're going to talk about some timelines today. We think we're going to be getting those applications in this summer. We know a lot of these approvals are going to be landing on your agenda coming up end of the summer into this fall, and so we're going to talk to you about that timeline today. Some of the team here is going to talk to you about the project itself, start getting some of these ideas out to you. And we know that parts of this project are going to change, and so we want to start getting this information out to you. We want to get some, let you ask some questions and understand what other information you want us to bring forward as this starts coming back to you on your agenda too. So I wanted to let you know that we're happy to answer questions all throughout this process. And then again, at the end here, we're going to be available for questions, but we really want to lay out the timeline. We're starting this engagement process. You're going to hear from the sponsors of the project, and they're starting this engagement. You heard from some of our, during the public comment period, you heard about some of the early engagement, how this project is going to go through some of our committees, some of our authorities, a lot of approvals that need to line up before this can get to you all, and then eventually we're really lining up a package to get to the state of Michigan, to the Michigan Strategic Fund for their approval of some of the really big incentives that are tied to this project. So with that, I am going to invite Sarah up from the Michigan Economic Development Corporation.
Thank you, Jamie.
Welcome, Sarah. Nice to have you here.
Thank you for having me. As Jamie mentioned, my name is Sarah Snewink. I'm the Community Development Manager for the Michigan Economic Development Corporation for our fine corner of the state. And I'm going to start this conversation off by just kind of level setting and giving you an overview of the Transformational Brownfield Plan program before we go into talking more about what that actually, the project looks like. So the Transformational Brownfield Program, or TBP, was born out of Act 381. This is the legislation that oversees the traditional brownfield tax increment financing plans. So the sorts of things that the local brownfield redevelopment authority is used to seeing month in and month out. The legislation that actually governs this sort of enhanced version of the program, the TBP, was enacted in 2017. And so it builds off Act 381, has a lot of similarities, and has some differences. Where those differences lie are both in scope and then the resources that are made available from the state to the program. In terms of scope, we're still looking at properties being supported that are difficult to redevelop. So we're looking at places that are blighted, functionally obsolete, historic, contaminated. But more than that, we look at projects that have significant transformational scale. So we're typically looking for projects that have significant capital investment. For a community the size of Kalamazoo, we're looking at a minimum of $50 million in investment. This is a project that exceeds that. We're also looking for opportunities for transformational support of economic development and community revitalization efforts. We're looking for job creation, creation of housing, increased opportunities for commercial operations within the properties that are being rehabilitated. Overall, it's something that's bigger than just a single property being really rehabilitated. It's supporting an ecosystem of change. Like a traditional brownfield tax increment financing plan, this is not a grant or cash investment up front on a project. This is funding like a traditional brownfield that is built on the capacity of a property to generate additional tax revenue in the future once it's been rehabilitated. So those are some of the changes in scope. We're talking about large-scale transformational projects. On the other side of the program, we look at revenue streams, and this is where this program also differs significantly from traditional brownfield plans. Where traditional brownfield tax increment financing allows capture of tax property increment, there are 5 additional revenue streams that the TBP program makes available to developers. On the front end, we have construction period income tax. We also have construction period sales and use taxes. Once the project is complete, there are 3 additional revenue streams that become available. We have property tax capture, we have withholding tax capture, and then we also have sales and use tax capture. Overall, this is my final slide, but just talking about the process for a developer to access the TBP resources at the state level. It starts with an initial intake and invitation to apply. So we've worked with this development team to receive an initial package that describes the scale and scope of their project. We've determined that it does align statutorily with the requirements of the TBP program, so it's something we could explore supporting. With that, we've issued them an invitation to apply. They've submitted an application fee to support that review, and we're now in stage 2, where we're reviewing a combined plan that outlines, again, in more detail the scale and scope of this project. We're working with third parties to validate some of the projections they've made about sales and use tax capture. We have underwriters evaluating the other proposed capture. This is the step we're in currently. When we complete this stage, we move on to local approval. Fishbeck and the rest of the team will spend a little bit more talking about what this means specifically for the city, but we're looking to the city to give the nod that, yes, this is a project that we think is important, this is something we'd like to see to proceed. Assuming we get that blessing, we then take this project back to the Michigan Strategic Fund Board, or MSF. That's the governing authority that has the final yes-no vote on issuing funding to support this project. Once we get to that point, assuming we're approved by the MSF, we have a reimbursement agreement that's executed, and at that point, the project is essentially underway. So with that, I will turn it over to our friends at Fishbeck to talk a little bit more about the city's role in all of this.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. I am David Stedjink with Fishbeck. I'm your consultant, assisting city staff with this program. I was asked to describe what is going to be the local government's role in this process. And largely the message is it's going to look pretty normal. This is going to come across as generally a normal brownfield plan, even though the project's big, got big numbers, has 3 different properties involved. Our approval process will remain essentially the same. City staff will verify the project is consistent with city plans for growth and that the plan is consistent with our policies that are in place. The staff will review the plan, consultants will review the plan. There'll be a public hearing at a regularly scheduled City Brownfield Redevelopment Authority meeting. That Brownfield Authority will decide whether to recommend adoption by City Commission, and it will come here for your approval final. That's all stuff you've done normally on every other brownfield plan that has been put in place in the city. There's no changes to that. What is amazing about the TBP is it unlocks all these resources at the state level. That work is largely done behind the scenes and with the developer and MEDC working together, keeping the city staff informed as we go. You saw Sarah mentioned all the additional added state resources that come. We don't have to approve those or evaluate those heavily. That's a state function working in the background. And then our local resources are really the same as we always contribute when we do a brownfield plan. We are deferring the gain in property taxes for a period of time to aid in the development of the project, and that's exactly what we're putting into it here, no more than we would normally do. I think I'll give credit to city staff. They're doing a tremendous job. There is a little bit more meetings and documentation to review here, but again, there's an administrative cost that's deducted from the taxes before it goes to developers, so the city keeps itself whole. So I think my message for now on the approval process is it's going to look very normal. So I will turn it over to the project team to get into the exciting stuff.
Thank you, David. And hello, Tricia.
Hi. Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and Commissioners. My name is Tricia Kidd, and I'm here representing Plaza Corp, here to introduce our vision for an exciting transformational redevelopment initiative in downtown Kalamazoo. Oh, yes, David already did it for me. Our vision is rooted in deep commitment to reinvest in Kalamazoo, turning underutilized, environmentally distressed properties into vibrant community-serving spaces. We're proud to present a project that leverages the state of Michigan's transformational brownfield plan to deliver new housing, create local jobs, and catalyze long-term revitalization. This multi-site initiative represents over $100 million in investment across 3 key downtown sites: 619 Porter Street, the Spearflex Building, and the Michigan Avenue Courthouse, fondly known as the MAC. This project is about more than redevelopment. It's about transformation. It's about breathing new life into underused, environmentally challenged properties and shaping them into vibrant, accessible spaces that fuel economic growth, environmental stewardship, and lasting reinvestment. When fully realized, this initiative will bring more than 115 residential units to downtown, activate commercial space to support local businesses, and address critical brownfield remediation needs. Just as importantly, this initiative preserves some of Kalamazoo's most historically significant buildings, ensuring that our architectural heritage not only endures, but continues to serve and inspire future generations. To help ground this vision in place, let's take a look at the project site map. You'll see 619 Porter is located just north of Kalamazoo Avenue, near Ransom Road. The Spearflex building sits at 261 East Kalamazoo Avenue, adjacent to Shakespeare's Pub. And the Michigan Avenue Courthouse, or the MAC, is prominently located at 227 West Michigan Avenue at the corner of Michigan and Rose, right at the heart of downtown Kalamazoo. As you can see, these sites fall within the boundaries of the Downtown Economic Growth Authority, the Northside Cultural Business District Authority, and the Brownfield Redevelopment Authority. Due to the nature of our NDA, we were only recently able to begin outreach and have since had the opportunity to meet with Mayor Anderson, with Chair Ardema, with Chair Jordan Woods, and Chair Middleton. Following tonight's introductory presentation, we're eager to continue these conversations in greater detail. Over the coming weeks, we'll be meeting with the executive teams of each respective board, then presenting to the full boards to ensure ongoing collaboration as this initiative moves forward. Let's start with 619 Porter. This site had previously received a brownfield approval, but like many developments across the country, it experienced unavoidable delays due to COVID-19, rapidly rising construction costs, and increasingly interest rates. Today, thanks to the support made possible through the state of Michigan's Transformational Brownfield Plan, we believe we have a clear and viable path forward to move this project to the finish line. As you may be aware, this particular site has had layered history, from 19th century residences to machine shops and warehouses in the earliest 20th century, followed by chemical supply use in the 1980s and 1990s. The main building has been vacant since the late 90s, and parts have collapsed. However, our team is committed to saving what we can of the building and honoring the site's legacy. We anticipate a $22 million investment to construct a new 5-story mixed-use building featuring 58 residential units and 5,000 square feet of commercial space, revitalizing this underutilized brownfield and supporting key initiatives around housing, economic development, and environmental stewardship. Next, we have the Spearflex building. Originally part of the Shakespeare's Company, founded in 1905 and recognized for producing fishing rods, the site expanded in the 1930s into the former Kalamazoo paper box factory with an iconic Art Deco office addition. Plaza Corp acquired the property in the early 2000s, converting it into loft-style office space. However, due to the pandemic-related shifts in work habits, demand for office space has declined. This would be a $22 million investment, and our vision reimagines 51,000 square feet of the Spearflex building as 57 residential apartments, revitalizing the property through adaptive reuse in an office to residential conversion while preserving its historic character. Shakespeare's Pub is anticipated to remain as the block's commercial anchor. This project promotes complete neighborhoods, sustainable reuse, and aligns with the community's vision for a livable downtown. Finally, the Michigan Avenue Courthouse, or the MAC. It was constructed in 1937. This iconic civic building has long served as home to courtrooms, judicial offices, and other county departments. Most recently, it housed the 8th District Court until relocation in 2023. We propose a $50 million investment, which would be an adaptive reuse to transform the historic Michigan Avenue Courthouse into a 127-room boutique hotel. This project will be anchored by a nationally recognized hotel brand, ensuring a high-quality hospitality experience that enhances downtown Kalamazoo's appeal as a destination. This redevelopment preserves a prominent landmark while introducing amenities such as full-service restaurant, lobby bar, speakeasy, and modern meeting spaces. Designed to serve both residents and visitors, the hotel will help drive tourism, support local businesses, and strengthen the city's economic vitality. In closing, this multi-site redevelopment initiative strongly supports Imagine Kalamazoo 2025, advancing shared prosperity through new housing and job creation, promoting complete neighborhoods by activating long vacant properties, enhancing economic vitality through increased tourism, and prioritizing environmental responsibility with meaningful brownfield remediation. Furthermore, this project preserves the architectural and historic identity of our downtown, investing in buildings and people that tell Kalamazoo's story, positioning us for a dynamic future. Lastly, this initiative represents a bold and thoughtful step forward, reinvigorating key sites in our downtown and reflecting our shared vision for Kalamazoo's future. At this time, I'd like to turn it over to Mark Shulcott from our office, who will walk us through the projected timeline and key milestones that will help bring our vision to life. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome, Mark.
Hi, good evening. Mark Chilcott with Plaza Corp Realty Advisors, Inc. And my part, as Tricia said, is to just tie together on a high-level overview our timelines that are in front of us. Much of it has already been discussed, so here's a visual depiction of it. During 2025, our time will be invested in working locally with you and with the state on both the local approvals for the tax increment financing, the abatement zones, and then with the state on the transformational approval through the MSF board there. And in this, you'll see that, well, there's a little more detailed schedule later on in this, but essentially, this month and in July, we'll be working with the local boards, so with the Northside Business District Association, DDA, DEGA, Brownfield Authority, working through our plan, helping them understand the impacts, things that we need to work with them and have agreements on, and set that in place. That will move into August, when the Brownfield plan starts moving through the approval process, and also the setup of the districts for the tax abatement. So August, and that will finalize in September when it comes before you for approvals. At the same time, and tying back to Sarah, the state is working through their underwriting process right now and review of our final application and materials, and asking lots of questions, and so we're busy responding to those questions. And ultimately, when their review is complete, we'll be working together to understand what the final approval is going to look like, and there may be some back and forth on that. Ultimately, that's happening at the same time, and when your September approvals are complete, then we move before the state MSF board either in October or December, based on how we land on their schedule, obtain their approval, and then, as Sarah said, move into their agreement as well. So the majority of this year, between now and the end of the year, is going to be obtaining the approvals for the necessary brownfield redevelopment funding sources to, fill that gap that is in place because of, all the conditions that we know, from, the revenues that can be derived from these, the high costs and the interest and everything else. They're expensive projects, but these are transformational in nature. Then what you'll see happening in 2026 is that's when we move into what our traditional role is the pre-development. So we are now focused on the actual completing our design for site and building and going through the governmental approval process with the various boards. We are also working with our construction programming, procuring the remainder of our financing, both bank and equity, and completing the majority of that in 2026. Some will take a little bit longer, and the MAC is one of those because of the scale of that project and all the moving pieces. And so, but we'll complete the majority of that in 26, and then in 27 is when we move into our construction program. And we're going to phase the construction starting first with 619, which is the 58-unit residential project. Start that in 26, complete it probably in early 27, start Spearflex in 28, complete that 28, 29, and then hopefully, if all is ready, start the MAC construction in 29 or 30 at the latest, and that's going to be about 24 months to complete. So that's a large overview of all the pieces, and there'll be a little more detail coming. I think Joe Augustinelli is going to be presenting a little more detail on the programs, and then someone will be touching on the schedule one last time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Did I mess up? No, you didn't. I think I am. Yes.
So returning to, again, what's the local role? We want to talk about tax abatements that are coming up. This project is going to ask for 3 different types of tax abatements to support each project. And what that essentially requires is that this body create a district specific to that project and property and the tax abatement that it is seeking. So that is part of the approval processes that Mark was talking about as well. That would all happen this year. It's important to note that all these abatements really apply to the improvements, so that the underlying property taxes that these 3 properties contribute now do continue to flow to the city. The exemptions are a go-forward basis only as it pertains to the improved value that is created from construction. And then when these exemptions and plans are all done, the city does benefit from the higher taxable value and higher taxable revenues on all of these properties. And I think we'll get into some more details on that, but again, another role for local approvals. And now it's you, Joe.
Thanks, David. Hi again, everybody. Joe Augustinelli, Managing Director of Michigan Growth Advisors. We've been leading the incentive consulting work for the Plaza Corp team for the last, I don't know how long, year or so probably, we've been exploring this. So here to talk through kind of the deal structure and what we're working on. As David mentioned, there's 3 different tax abatements contemplated here, 1 each for each of the 3 component projects, not 3 abatements per project, just to be clear. And it's 3 different ones because the structure of each one of these projects is a little bit different in both use, type of construction, and therefore the particular abatement tool that fits each project is different on a project level basis. So functionally, though, these are all very similar in how they operate. They're reducing the increase in property taxes that result from the investment, which helps ultimately the cash flow of the project so that it can reach financial viability. But on the MAC project, the proposed tax abatements under the Commercial Redevelopment Act, this abatement freezes the taxable value at its current level for 12 years. The taxes being paid today continue to be paid today, and this runs concurrent with the brownfield plan. Effectively, this helps the cash flow of the project by controlling some of the millages that are paid but not captured by the brownfield plan, specifically the debt millages. The Neighborhood Enterprise Zone, or NEZ tax abatements, what's being contemplated for 619 Porter. This is a tool that really sets up well for new construction projects in mixed-use buildings. This reduces the amount of tax that's paid to 1/2 the statewide average millage rate, which is currently 27.08 mils. And that would apply for 12 years with a 3-year phase-in of the city and county millages, so total benefit period of 15 years. And then on the Spearflex building, there's a proposed Commercial Rehabilitation Act tax abatement, which is different than the Commercial Redevelopment Act, but functions generally the same. The only difference here is the duration of the project. Why 2 different ones? One can be used for hotels and the other one cannot. That's why we're exploring the 2 different abatement tools. And again, this maintains the taxable value at the frozen level for 10 years. Quick overview on sort of the incentive stack here. One bullet point I didn't include, but I think is important to point out. Under the Transformational Brownfield Program, state statute sets a limit on both how many projects can be done in Michigan and how much transformational or TBP incentive can be authorized. And the state has reached its cap on projects that have either been approved or are under invitation to apply like this one. There's 13 projects in that bucket, so this is one of 13 deals that'll get done with this program in Michigan. We're the consultants on 3 of those, and I can tell you the path to get to where we're at right now with the MEDC is a long one, so it's a really big deal for Kalamazoo to be invited to apply for a project under this program, given the there's far more demand than supply of incentive that's out there. So at a high level, the total combined project cost of the 3 combined projects is just over $100 million. Of that, about 58% of it will be financed with conventional debt, borrowing through likely a combination of lenders on a project-by-project basis. Roughly 30% of the project will be owner-investor equity, cash into the project by investors in the development team. About 7% of the project will be funded through the monetization of federal historic preservation tax credits. That's for the Michigan Avenue Courthouse project. So that'll be developed in compliance with the United States Department of Interior Secretary Standards for Historic Preservation, what I like to refer to as the Historic Bible, meaning we're going to follow all the historic preservation rules and regulations, and in exchange for doing that, there's a historic tax credit that can provide additional incentive into the project. And then about 3% of the project costs are related to the transformational brownfield, but fund near-term benefit. The TBP program grants a sales tax exemption on construction materials, so that's essentially a cost avoidance for the project, and allows you to capture state income tax withholding of construction workers as they're actively working on the project sites. So that represents about 3% of the capital stack. And the remaining 2%, hopefully our math adds up to 100 there, is funded through already approved state and federal grants through the American Rescue Plan, or ARPA, and the Michigan Economic Development Corporation's Revitalization and Placemaking 2.0 program. And those grants have both been awarded to the 619 Porter project. So quick summary here by type, helping you quantify the dollar amounts involved. So the total value of the neighborhood enterprise zone, or NEZ, tax abatement over the 15-year abatement period on the 619 Porter project is about $1.2 million. The CRA, Commercial Redevelopment Act, tax abatement on the MAC is valued at about $2.8 million over 12 years. And then the CRA, Commercial Rehabilitation Act, tax abatement for the Spearflex project is valued at about $1 million over 10 years. And then the incentive breakdown of the TBP. So the construction period tax capture, that's the, I mentioned that on the previous slide, capturing state income tax withholding of construction workers building the project, is about $3.3 million of incentive provided by the state. The sales tax capture, that is, this is a capture of state sales tax paid by businesses operating within the transformational brownfield projects. That'd be your ground floor retail and the hotel. That represents about $18.5 million of capture over a 20-year period. And then there's a capture of state income tax withholding of people living within the development. That residential income tax capture is about $13.5 million. Capture of the commercial payroll withholding tax of workers working within businesses operating within the TVP program. So this will be, again, ground floor retail workers. This would include your property facilities maintenance workers, and then obviously all the hotel employees and all the associated development of that, of the MAC project. It's about $2.9 million over 20 years. And then the remainder of the incentive is what would be the traditional brownfield tax increment financing. So that's capturing the growth in real estate taxes over 25 years. And that's broken out about $10 million of local capture and about 5.8 of state capture under the brownfield program. So lots of incentive involved. Of the whole incentive stack, about 18% of it is locally impacted, local millages, so that roughly $10 million of local tax increment revenues. The balance of that is state funding coming into the project. And then I think I'm handing it off to Jamie. Yes, thank you.
Joe, may I ask a quick question?
Yes.
I'm sorry.
Of course.
Tie together the totals there on the incentive side, which come to a dollar amount which is in excess of 50% of the projected project cost relative to the 3% component of your development pro forma there.
You're talking about this slide, the 3% that's related to construction period savings.
Yeah.
Okay, I understand the question. So this slide is looking at the essentially sources of funds that will be used to construct the project. So what dollars are going in at closing to pay contractors to go build stuff. Of that, about 3% is attributable to not paying sales tax on construction materials, and then the capture of construction worker withholding taxes, which is essentially we're going to pay it's dollars that recycle into the project in the near term, so we're considering it as a source of funds.
Got it.
Which is different than this slide, which is the ongoing sort of cash flow incentive that's coming into the project over 20 to 30 years into the future.
So this is the operating
correct
subsidy support side, and the other one's the development side. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. That's helpful. Thank you.
Yes. Thanks.
Well, thank you to everyone who's come up here and given us a whole lot of information. I just want to leave us with a little more detail on the timeline, which I know several have described to you all, but I think it's important here to point out that all three of these projects overlap some important existing authorities that have tax capture authority already. And so because they exist first in time, they have the right to capture. And so the project is going to be going forward here this month and next month to negotiate those agreements and make that request to ask those authorities to share that tax capture in some way so that this project can come through, and then that the Brownfield Authority can be the acting authority for some period of time to make this plan move forward. And that is a standard process now moving forward, that we have the Northside Cultural Business District Authority and the Downtown Economic Growth Authority. Now that those authorities are fully in place and capture within their districts projects that want to do another type of capture, like a brownfield plan, need to go forward to those districts first and work with them before they can, before you all can then adopt a brownfield plan. So that foundational work will happen in June and July. Once that work is done, we'll move into August. We'll be able to bring forward to the Brownfield Redevelopment Authority a draft plan for their consideration. They will hold that public hearing, and then their recommendation moves forward to this body. And so you'll likely be seeing that in the September timeframe. Along with that, concurrent, we expect to see some applications moving forward. Kind of mid-summer, we'll start seeing those tax abatement applications coming in. So we'll do some the public noticing that's required under statute. And you're going to start setting those public hearings. You'll see those on your agenda starting in August. And you'll start holding those public hearings in September. You'll probably even see some of those certificates, once the districts are formed, you'll start seeing a lot of the information, some of those numbers that you saw on quantifying exactly what the value of that tax abatement would be for each of those projects. You'll start seeing those certificates coming forward, even in that second September meeting, probably, kind of getting that teed up. And then certainly by October, you'll start seeing those certificates. So really trying to finalize everything into the third quarter of this year so that we can get this local package put together for that Michigan Strategic Fund board meeting later at the end of the year. So with that, I will open it up to questions and certainly invite those from the team who can come up here and answer these questions to join me.
Thanks again, Jamie. Questions from Commission at this point? Commissioner Cooney.
Jamie, how do you intend to address the questions that came to us at the beginning from the people from the north side?
Bobby, do you want to come talk about the neighborhood enterprise zone? I think those were the questions that came up, working on that piece with neighborhood residents. Bobby Durkee's with Community Planning and Economic Development, my department, and is the liaison, or I guess the staff person who oversees that application process. Do you recall hearing those questions?
Yep. Welcome, Bobby.
Thank you, Mayor. Good afternoon, Commissioner Cooney. Great question. I've been kind of circulating that thought that Mrs. Woods, Jordan Woods, brought up earlier. The NEZ here described is a newer rehab NEZ. I think the only nuance to that request is there's the one for homeowner occupants is a homestead NEZ, and that's to say it would just need to be a separate district, but I think there's certainly an option to explore that. The homestead NEZ is the original one dated back to the 90s, I believe, where the incentive was to encourage home ownership. So it's a tool meant to do that. The city currently has one in Vine, so it's something I could start exploring and definitely seems viable to the act and our policy.
So you'll be in touch with them and you'll be talking this over with them?
Yeah, I think with even looking at this NEZ district, you know, it's a great question. Where is there areas for home ownership and where should those go? And we have the resources at CPED to start to navigate that question, and I could certainly reach out to Maddie and continue that dialogue.
Thank you.
Good question. Thank you, Commissioner. Other questions, Commissioner? Yeah, Commissioner Wilson. Microphone.
Sorry, it's been a minute. Thanks, Jamie. I had a question. At our recent BRA retreat, we made a strong encouragement for developers to include approximately 20% of affordable housing at least 100% AMI. I was wondering if that strong encouragement was going to apply to these projects, and then also what are the numbers for those?
I will make one distinction that this is not including that housing TIF specifically because it is going through the MEDC. However, I will have them speak to kind of the housing mix and where they're going with that.
Thank you. Yeah, great question. So I think the short answer is we're still working on it, but there's a statutory requirement under the Transformational Brownfield Program that the project be subject to a written binding affordable housing agreement with the city. That's a requirement for the residential income tax capture component of the TVP incentive stream, which is really important to the deal's viability. So that's a piece that we're still talking about. You know, how that's exactly ultimately structured, TBD still. Certainly it's going to be more market rate units than affordable, but you know, it's certainly more than zero. It's not 100% affordable. You know, where we fall in that range and at what AMI price points, we still need to work through with city staff and in the context of what works in the pro forma, but it is going to be part of the project for sure.
Thanks. More to come.
Yep. Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner Wilson. Other questions at this time? Commissioner Pradel.
Thank you, Jamie and team. Question for you. For the meeting dates and milestone timeline, you talked about how in September of this year you're hoping to form the tax districts. Do you anticipate all three of those would be presented in the same month or the same meeting? Or would the first one roll out in September and the other ones potentially be later? I was curious about that.
Yes, I can speak to that a little bit more. We are trying to collapse these into as many of the same meetings as possible so that you're seeing these concurrent. You're going to see setting of public hearings in that second August meeting as much as possible. The two CRA, if you remember those acronyms, they have a little bit more of a compressed timeline. The NEZ, for whatever reason, will require a little more extended timeline. I think you're going to see an extra meeting date in there, the way we have it charted out. But for the most part, you will see a lot of overlap. So you're going to see, hopefully, these teed up on your meeting and fairly timed up in those later August and to September and then into October meetings, if that answers your question.
Sure. Yeah, thank you. You mentioned this is like one of 13 invitations to partake in this, which sounds like a pretty big deal for us as a community in the state. You mentioned in that stack that there's the 2% of project costs are anticipated from state and federal sources. Are those effectively locked in once the application goes through? Or the reason I'm asking is because with the project timeline, the last project's slated to be finished in like 2030. And so I just was wondering, how do we make sure that those funds are secured through fruition of the three projects?
Yeah, absolutely. The ARPA funds and the RAP grant have been allocated, awarded to the 619 Porter project. So that's the first one to go. As you probably all remember all too well, a lot of that COVID federal funding has a must be spent by 12/31/2026 deadline on it. Yeah, they were approved. The 619 Porter, just to back up and refresh everybody's memory, was ready to go pre-COVID, had a state incentive attached to it, and made sense 5 years ago. And COVID happened, and costs went through the roof, and lots of things. The development world got crazy, and ultimately. Through that delay, we lost the state's approval of the CRP, and we kind of had to rethink the whole capital stack. So those grants are really critical, but yeah, thankfully are already allocated. We just need to get going and spend them before the deadline.
Sure.
Yeah.
Then I'm going to ask a couple questions just about making productive use of spaces. For the Spearflex, would those remain commercial until the start of the project, or would...
Yes is the answer.
Okay.
Tricia.
Yes, those are anticipated to be commercial until we start the project, and then the whole building will turn residential.
Okay.
So there will not be any commercial component in the building, but we have the next door neighbor, the Shakespeare's Pub, that we are considering our commercial partner there.
Okay, great.
So.
And then the second one is for the MAC, if you will, the hotel project in the old courthouse, and I know that's currently just sitting vacant.
Yes.
You know, I know one thing is just making productive use of empty spaces, and it's not just true of downtown, but also even our neighborhoods. We've had some nonprofit partners who've acquired some homes, and they're sitting there, and when anytime that there's not productive use of a site, there's I don't know, it's just unfortunate, because there's so many needs or ways that space could be used. Have you all given any thought about, since that one is going to be the last of the three projects, any activation opportunities or ways that we could use that space to activate it and bring some life to it in the meantime?
Well, we're always open to listen to any suggestions. The thing with that one is the historic nature, and sometimes we can't disturb it, we can't, so it does depend on a lot of SHPO, which is very, like he said, the historic Bible, so it just depends.
Sure. Yeah, and even if it's not necessarily in the building, I mean, perhaps there's some creative uses for the exterior. I also just worry about as well of just making sure the exterior of the building is presentable, because I mean that's really
It's very
front and
prominent.
center.
We call it in real estate main and main.
Yeah,
Yes.
exactly. And it concerns me because I know it'll be here before we know it, but it is a long time that it'll potentially sit vacant. But I was just curious.
Sure, we're definitely open to conversation.
All right, thanks. Appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Commissioner Pradel. Other questions? Commissioner Hoffman?
Thank you so much. I have a question in reference to the developers and how will this project benefit the residents of the North Side in a tangible way?
Well, I think first the collapsing building is very an eyesore, so definitely getting that into shape for that neighborhood. There will be an affordable component to that, and then we have been in discussion with Maddie Jordan Woods about what can we do, maybe potentially with a commercial space downstairs. We did discuss her NEZ homestead, so we have been in discussion with them, so we look to learn more. Like I said, we've just been doing this past week because of our NDAs. So I'll have more for you as time goes on, and we definitely can sit down and talk with each, the North Side and others.
Yes, thank you for that. And I'm hoping you all would be open to some kind of community benefits agreement with the North Side that is intentional and realistic.
Absolutely, and I know there's a new executive director, so I've been trying to get a hold of that person, and Maddie informed me, I think there's just an interim for now, and then nothing's really moving forward till that new executive director comes through, so that's my first call when somebody, gets there.
And then my last is, I always get a little queasy when I hear developers talk about shared prosperity and how it connects to Imagine Kalamazoo. If we're real, like when we talk about affordable housing for the Porter project, it would be lovely if we could see something between the 30 and 50% range, because those are the residents that will be living there. Like a lot of people will have to move with this development, which is good for the city, but how can we make it better for the North Side? And so when I think about that shared prosperity aspect, I'm also thinking about how does the workforce development really dig deep into the North Side residents that can take advantage of those job positions.
Yes, and Maddie shared that with us too at our meeting last week as well. So definitely take that in consideration. We appreciate that.
Okay, thank you, Maddie.
Any other questions from Commission at this time? All right, well, just thank you so much for being here. I know that I want to just say a couple things just as a reminder, is that every commissioner here does participate as a liaison or a voting member of another board here. Those are things that sometimes are required by statute. Commissioner Wilson participates obviously with the Brownfield side of things, and so we'll be able to see things from those perspectives and be involved in conversations that we won't necessarily have to the full scale that we might hear at the City Commission meeting. But that does mean that knowledge and awareness does get brought together here at the Commission, and I want to thank all the time that is behind the scenes that people don't necessarily recognize that the commissioners do put in on other boards. Once again, based on statute, I happen to sit on the boards of 2 of the CIAs that are in the NCBDA, which will be involved in Porter, and also the DAGA, the Downtown Economic Growth Authority. So I have the opportunity to participate at that level as well. That all said, and I think you did a great job of laying this out. I really appreciate, looking through some of the numbers already at this, very beginning stage, but understanding the benefit. I agree with you, Commissioner Prado, that, 1 of 13 in the state, this is amazing. We've got a lovely, wonderful building, which I think people are grappling with. How is that going to be reused? Been thinking about that for years, ever since we knew that the county was going to move out, and having the opportunity to do something with such a critical building downtown, right by the park here, is an important thing. A lot of details to work out, Commissioner Hoffman, and to have this thing feel like it is really a broadly community benefit. I'm sure that at the end of the day, we may not get everything we want, but we want to make sure that we get what we feel that we need to have for this to feel like an equitable development here in the city of Kalamazoo. A lot going on, and here's what I'm hoping, is that we just don't see this again on our agenda in September, that we find a way to kind of communicate to the commission, here's what's happening, we met with these boards, here's what's going on. So we're hearing some of that feedback and update, which will happen at other levels before we come back here. And that could be, I presume, either through Manager Ritzma's updates, maybe, that sort of thing. But just make sure that this isn't, okay, we're done, and then we see you again in September. So keep us in the loop on all this. I appreciate everyone's efforts so very much. Manager Ritzma.
That concludes the work session this evening.
Thank you so much. Now is the opportunity for commissioner comments. Just a reminder that there's also a commissioner comment opportunity at our business meeting that starts at 7. Any commissioner comments for the good of the order here for the committee of the whole? Seeing none, we are adjourned.